To me, my X-Men.
Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to the Cool Kids Lunch Table Podcast with PJ and Mike. Now find yourself a seat at their table.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Cool Kids Lunch Table Podcast with PJ and Mike. I'm PJ.
Now I'm Mike.
And today we're taking a trip down to the Danger Room.
The
The best opening song for any cartoon. We're going to be, now that the show is over, it's been a few weeks, we're going to talk about X-Men 97 with a little more detail, a little more spoilers. We've kind of spoken about it in a couple of episodes, here and there about certain things, but we were trying to keep it spoiler free because it was still new. But the time has come to rip that spoiler Band-Aid off and dive into what I think is the best Disney Plus show since the streaming services started, and the best piece of, I don't know if you want to call it MCU, but just anything that Marvel has put out in the last, I don't know, decade. It feels like.
You're so right, because when I was watching this, the reason I was able to binge watch this because I've been out sick from work. I have paraflu, which is usually it's a type of flu that little kids get. So I guess the cool kids get
flus.
Yeah, get kids disease.
Yeah.
But yeah, I watched this, and dude, you excuse me, as you see, I'm sick. You hit the nail around the head where it was just like the tone, and I was like, wow, imagine if they actually adapted this actual story and put it to screen. God. Holy smokes.
Isn't it that good? I know, like, whenever I was talking about it over the last few weeks, when I would mention it here and there, I was giving it like a glowing review. But now that you've seen it, like, I didn't oversell this show.
No,
it's
not at
that
all.
Good.
It's great. It's great. I think the best way to, and we're gonna get more deeper into this, folks, but just kind of just our hot takes on this is, even if you never saw the original, 90s cartoon, and it kind of they do it brilliantly. Like, they don't really do a hardcore like recap, maybe like a minute, and then all of a sudden it's like bam, they hit the ground running, and it's like total movement. There's no drag time,
and anybody can appreciate it. You're exactly right. They wrote this in such a great way where if you watch the original cartoon, you pick up on so much stuff. You're like, I remember them doing that in the original. I remember this. But if you've never seen it, it's still just as good. You just don't pick up those little nuances. But it's written so fantastically that anyone can jump into this having never had any experience with the X-Men, especially the old cartoon, and still appreciate it. It's that good.
Yeah, I didn't rewatch the original series to get into this. Like, the last time I saw that original stuff, I guess, was 1997, 96.
Yeah, exactly.
So I haven't watched a full episode since, But yeah, it's really almost like going on a roller coaster. You just strap in, bam, and then it's like, no, I love it. It reminded me in a weird way of Breaking Bad, in terms of where, like, at the end of each episode, you're like, okay, I want to see the next one.
Yep.
And I love Breaking Bad. I'm not a big TV series kind of guy, so for me to give this kind of review and give it, this much praise, it really deserves it.
Yeah, I was blown away by the writing quality, the animation quality, the voice work. They brought back so many of the original voice actors.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them they couldn't because they were either, their voices aged out and they couldn't do that same voice, or the actors may have passed since then. But the folks they brought in to even replace them, it was seamless. Like, as soon as you hear it, you're like, that's Cyclops, that's a Gambit, that's Wolverine. The only voice that I had any sort of an issue with was Rogue.
Really?
I thought her voice was just a little too high pitched, and it kind of got on my, like.
I think she's the original though, right?
She is, yeah. Her voice has just changed.
Well,
over
she's
time.
an older woman, but I felt it's a little bit more like, I guess, say, like, huskier. It's not. You're right. It's more high pitched. She's probably pushing more.
Yeah.
As she's older, but it wasn't for me. It wasn't really a distraction.
It wasn't so much a distraction, but it was just was just a little too high pitched for me. It kind of got on my nerves every so often. I think she did a great job with emoting and all of that. It was just a little bit too high pitched for me. But I think if that's the one negative I have to say about the cast, that's something. Because usually there's a million things to complain about, and there really isn't on this show. So let's just rewind all the way back to our childhood, to our youth. I watched the cartoon as a kid, and I know you watched the cartoon as a kid because we would talk about it at the lunch table the day after we watched it. So I know we both watched it. In the original, who was your favorite character?
I'm gonna be one of those people. I'll say two. It was Wolverine and Gambit.
Yeah. So
Those two always crack me up. You know, I
yeah.
love
So for
Wolverine's
me,
ferociousness, and Gambit
yeah,
always kind of like he had like
is
swagger.
swagger. Yes.
Yeah, you
So
know.
Gambit's my favorite Marvel character out of every Marvel character that exists. Gambit is my favorite in the
Oh, I did
Marvel
not know
universe.
that.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm more of a DC guy than a Marvel guy.
that I knew. That I
And
knew. Yeah.
yeah, and in general, X Men are not my favorite comic books. However,
Yes. Hmm.
Gambit is my favorite Marvel character. So he was my favorite in the original show. And then my second favorite X Men in the comics is probably Beast.
Yeah, I like.
But in
Yep.
the
Yep.
original show, he didn't have a huge part. So I would probably default to Wolverine in the original show also.
Yeah. 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 I just remember as a kid, like, I remember seeing that you had like Batman came out and all that kind of
Yep.
stuff, but like seeing the X-Men, that really introduced me to the storyline and everything. All I can say is I don't remember, like, so this is, me as a child, but I just remember as a kid, I don't remember TV shows kind of having a long, long story arc. That
Right.
wasn't really a thing. Everything was like kind
Hmm.
of like villain of the week, and they had
Yep.
episodes like that, but there was always an over,
Yes.
arching storyline. And I just remember as a kid, remember they go into their future
Yep.
and all those different things, and they go to the island, and I remember
Yes.
they start collecting the toys, of course. But oh man,
The episode that I always remember, there were two episodes that I remember. I think they're both multi-parters actually, but it's the one where they get captured and they have to wear like the collar that takes away their powers.
yes,
That
yep,
I always remember that episode, and I always remember the one where Gambit goes back to New Orleans and he has to pay the tithe, and
right, right,
then,
right.
and his like brother is kidnapped, whoever it was, his brother, his cousin, whoever
Mhm.
is kidnapped, and he's trying to save who was his wife at the time, and she's all evil. Those are my two favorites from the original series.
Yeah, for me, I can't remember specific episodes. The only one I can really remember is when they do that. There's like a time travel episode,
Hmm.
and I guess it's a spoiler alert. I know at one point there's like some kind of virus, and they send Wolverine, and because he can rejuvenate
Yes.
or healing, he
Yeah.
can make the antidote, like
Right.
uh for the cure for us. They send him back, with his DNA and all that crap. But I remember just as a kid, like all the villains too, like Sauron. He was like the
Yes.
like a pterodactyl guy,
Yes.
and I like
Omega
Omega
Red
Red. Yes, and I loved
and
uh
Saber.
yeah, I love this version. I say this is like the real mean Sabretooth. I just seen I had the toy. Remember the Apocalypse? He had like those tubes that you had to like
Yes.
attach them to his arms and everything. You just reminded me. I'm not sure if I talked about this in another episode, but there's a character in X-Men called Nimrod. Okay,
Yes, there is.
and I just learned about this recently. So when we think of the word Nimrod in culture today, we think of, for me anyway, you think about Bugs Bunny going like, "Oh, you Nimrod,"
Yeah.
right? You know
Yeah.
what the definition of Nimrod actually is?
Yeah. No, what is it?
It actually means skilled hunter.
Really?
So yeah, yeah. So early American literature and I guess English literature, when you call someone a Nimrod means they're a very good
Huh.
hunter. So I guess in the comics, Nimrod is actually like he hunts down the
The
mutants.
mutants, yeah.
But when Bugs Bunny came out and they put that, the word Nimrod
It,
sounds like
it like
cartoonish.
yeah, it sounds like you're like a moron.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So when he was making fun of Elmer Fudd, "Oh, you Nimrod," he's really saying it sarcastically. So as a culture, we think of the word Nimrod as like, "Oh, you're a doofus," but in
Uh,
reality, it means you're very
so
skilled hunter.
so
Yeah.
wait. So he's calling Elmer Fudd a Nimrod because Elmer Fudd's a hunter.
Yes, exactly. But
Right,
he's
because he
saying
doesn't
it.
call
Yeah.
like Yosemite Sam a Nimrod. He doesn't call the other Daffy
Yep.
Duck a Nimrod.
Yeah.
My mind is fucking blown.
Exactly. But the way
My
he,
mind is blown.
but the tone he uses
Yes.
is like, "Oh, you Nimrod," you know.
Huh.
So yeah, yeah,
That that is a fun fact.
yeah.
I did not know that, but that's really funny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
But I just going
Oh.
back to the '90s cartoon. I think some of the negatives was like the animation wasn't
Oh
the
yeah.
best. It was a big. It was still in that. It was like you compare it to like Batman the animated series, which was gorgeous. That really set the tone
Oh
after that.
yeah.
It changed.
Yeah, this had so many like just
This was
continuity errors. Like
yeah,
all of a sudden Wolverine has yellow arms. The next scene he's wearing his street clothes.
yeah, yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yep. This still had the animation of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
Yeah.
GI
Yeah.
Joe, that kind of pale colors in a way.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but what I like about the new one, the X-Men '97, is they keep the animation like the style, but obviously it's like
But
you're not gonna have
updated.
this exactly. And
Yes, I
at
agree.
times they still kind of have like a little bit of that like that clunkiness when they
Yeah.
walk, but then the
Yeah.
action is all like polished, popped off. So they did a
The
really nice job with that.
They did. I think it was the very first episode. Um, and the original cartoon, Cyclops is like just the worst. He's like grates on your nerves. He's not very likable in the original cartoon.
Hmm.
And that's because all the attention is on how cool Wolverine and Gambit are in the original
Yeah.
cartoon, and he
Hmm.
just comes across as like
Yeah.
a teacher's pet. You
Yep.
can't like him. But then this series starts off, and this motherfucker like jumps out of a plane,
Yep.
uses his blast to slow
Yep.
himself down,
Yep.
and then he's fighting with the blast, and he's using the blast to like slide all around the villains and blast people. It was so badass. But they
Yeah.
like in 1 minute, they took what was the original show, like what, 4 or 5 seasons in the 90s.
Yep.
They erased all of his like doofiness and
Yeah.
just
And just
douchiness
yeah.
with one scene showing how awesome he could be. I thought the character rehabilitation they did for Cyclops on this was brilliant.
Perfect
Brilliant.
word. Yeah, he was very one-dimensional.
Yeah.
Like you said, like a teacher's pet. And now, and I'm not. We're gonna have spoilers, but I'm not gonna spoil everything. But
Right.
one of the things I love about this show was the comedy. These guys some
Yes.
good
He
one-liners.
did.
Cyclops has a good line. Later on, Magneto had a great line. I don't even want to share. I laughed my ass off. I think it's in the second to last, the last episode. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my god, I was going wild. But yeah, the comedy's good, man. Anyway, they have. I'm glad, like you said, they gave almost like a redemption. Like they made him
Yeah.
sort of like this tool. Like they really made him have a lot of heart now. You like him, and like when you're like, yeah, blast that shit.
Like you said, that we'll do spoilers, but not super heavy. But we're gonna talk about some stuff. The
Mhm.
scene where he's getting interviewed by the reporter
Yeah.
is like, first of all, if they could pull that off in live action, what a
Yeah.
great moment when it's
Hmm.
supposed to be like a fluff piece on the X-Men and shit's falling apart, and he's just like, it's your fault. This is all
Yeah.
your fault. We're just people. We have to protect you when you're trying to kill us just so that maybe you'll accept us. And I'm supposed to be okay with that. And now all the mutants are dying and you want to talk to me like it's okay, like everything is fine. Like that whole scene where you just start seeing him like get darker and darker while he's like talking to this reporter was so well written. So well
Hmm.
written.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think that's one of my favorite scenes in this entire season. Is
Yep.
just that slow descent of him being the goody two shoes teacher's pet, and then you get to that scene and you're like, Magneto was right, and
Hmm.
he starts to feel almost more like a Magneto
Yep.
than a Professor X, right? Usually he's a
Hmm.
whatever Professor X says, Cyclops would do, no questions asked. But in that moment, you're like, oh shit, he's got a little bit of Magneto in there today.
Yep.
I thought
Hmm.
that was done so well.
No, it's funny because I wrote that as a note, and I think for me that was almost, I want to say that the show has like is like, for me that was the turning point of the
Mhm.
show where it got more intense.
Yes.
Obviously, because I don't want to say, it would be unfair to say in the first maybe 1 or 2 episodes it's like, I want to say paint by numbers. That's not fair. But you kind of feel like, okay, this is,
Yeah, they're
this
playing
is.
basketball
Yep.
in the
Yeah. Yeah.
courtyard, and
Yeah.
they're all
Yeah. And
hanging
then
out.
and after that scene, you're like,
Yep,
okay, here we go. Now
yep,
you're on uncharted territory because he's bugging out now. Because I guess we'll do a plot synopsis. Um, and PJ will do a little bit more in deep, but Professor X has at this point kind of let uh, Cyclops kind of run the show initially.
right,
So,
right.
mhm,
So the way the original series ended back in 1997 is Professor X gets shot. He's and Lilandra from the Shire Empire. I don't know how to say it.
yeah,
Shiar.
yeah, hmm,
She says, "Well, we can save him. I can take him back and save his life, but he won't be able to come back to Earth."
yep,
So essentially, this shows the X Men '97, the new show, starts off with Professor X is dead. Right?
yep.
They have to. He's presumed dead to the world because Cyclops can't go on TV and say, "Oh no, he was shot," but
And he
he's in
went off to
space.
space.
It's just like,
Yeah,
no, he's dead. He got shot. He was
right. And
assassinated.
it's a year later,
And,
actually. Mhm,
right, and it's now a year later, and it's almost mimicking history in a way where like that assassination is what starts to turn people around to accepting X-Men, right? Like it's just like a turning point in the battle for equality for mutants. And now a year later, the mutants aren't really hated that much in the first couple of episodes. Like you said, not paint by numbers, but it's a very
like
upbeat sort of
familiar.
yeah, right.
Hmm.
Until the very end when we find out that Professor X has a will that's now being executed. The will, and the X-Men and the Mansion is not left to Scott Summers, but instead left to Magneto.
Bum bum bum.
And
Yeah.
Magneto is now the leader of the X-Men, and he wears what it's straight from the comic books. The costume he wears is from the comic books, but it's very superhero esque. It's got a cape. It's got a tights. It's not angry looking. The way the Magneto had like the purple armor on the top and the
Yep.
angry helmet and all that, right? This is just the straight up superhero costume with an M on the front and a big cape and flowing long, luscious gray locks.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and he's just a straight up superhero, is what he looks like. And he's trying to now, we'll say, change his ways and follow his friend Xavier's dream instead of his own because maybe Xavier was right. And now he has to gain the trust of everyone.
Mhm.
That's how the first episode ends. And the minute you're like, the fuck, they left Magneto in charge. Give me the next episode. I need to see
Yep.
what happens. It's just you don't expect it. You expect Scott to lead the
Yeah.
X-Men.
Mhm.
He's the star student, and now
Yeah.
he's not.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great piece of writing. I thought that was a great idea. I don't remember if it was the next episode. I'd have to look at the episode list where Magneto goes to trial.
Let me see.
I think it may have been.
Yep. 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 Yep.
All
Yep.
right.
Mhm.
There is a
Yep.
couple of real great scenes when Magneto goes to trial, when they get attacked and he saves everyone, and he takes, I guess it was the senator or the judge or whoever, like in space in his magnet bubble, which I guess is a thing,
Yep.
and gives them some perspective on the. It's a beautiful, beautiful scene. I can't do it justice to try and recite the words or explain it. It's just a beautifully written scene of Magneto showing people a different perspective, but not killing them
Yeah.
the way he would
Yeah.
normally do. Um, and then
I,
you start to see that, and you're like, well, maybe all these years Professor X was right. Magneto wasn't evil. He was just acting out in the only way he thought to at that time. And your opinion starts to change on Magneto a little bit at that moment, where you're
yeah.
like, I could see him leading this team.
Exactly. And I think, which is cool too. You see, you know, Cyclops wrestle with like, how could Professor
Yeah,
X do this?
yeah,
And then he's almost kind of battling Magneto for like leadership, but at the same time he's like respecting, you know, Professor X's
hmm
wishes. So it was really good with that what they did, and they kind of have I don't know if I should reveal. Okay, him and Jean Grey, right? There's this
yeah.
whole huge dynamic there. Um,
That I mean, I don't think there's any way to talk about that without just
right.
spoiling it. So,
Yep. We'll
spoiler
just do it.
alert, folks. It's
Yep.
going to be a spoiler. They go very, very deep on comic book lore in this
Yep.
show. They do not pull any punches. And so Jean Grey is not Jean Grey in this. You find out that Jean is pregnant. They're
Mm-hmm.
gonna have a baby, and then at the end of, I think it's the second episode. Is it the end of the second or the end of the
Yep.
third? The
Yep.
second,
Second
right?
episode. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Jean Grey shows up half dead at the X-Men door. So who is this Jean Grey that Scott's been married to? It's a clone. It's
Yep.
Madeline Pryor, who is from the comic books and it is the fact that are these writers sat in a room and they said, "No, it's in the comics. We're going to give them the comics."
Yeah.
And you're and I've always said the original Marvel movies, MC when it first started, was good because it relied on the writing of the comic books, right?
Yep.
They didn't try and go off script. That's why this show is so good. They're like, it happened in the comics in the 90s, it happens on this show. Here's a
Mm-hmm.
clone, and your mind is blown.
Exactly. I think one of the other things with this show, this isn't really a show for like. It's really aimed more towards like maybe teenagers and adults, not
I
because of the
Yeah,
subject matter, just because it actually
it's
gets the
heavy.
storyline gets tricky. That's the
Yeah,
thing, because you're dealing with because a little kid might be like, how are there two green? I'm not saying
right.
kids aren't capable of understanding that, but there's a lot of within 10 episodes, you got a lot of crap going on.
Yeah, a lot.
So you have, like I said, you have Jean Grey, um, or Madeline is pregnant, and that whole dynamic, and then you start dealing with these other they're looking for Trask, and I'm
Yeah,
kind of skipping ahead here, but the storyline does get a bit confusing,
yeah, it gets
just because
hectic.
there's a
It
lot
gets
of
hectic.
chess pieces moving. So for
Yes.
a little kid might like
could
it,
see that.
but they might not understand all the storylines. Like a
No,
five,
absolutely.
not
You're
gonna. They might
100%
like
right.
all the, they like the superheroes, but not gonna really fully comprehend. I think the storyline. It's very mature.
Yeah.
Um,
And then the next episode is really the fallout of that. And I don't know if it was episode 3. It may not have been. But there's the episode when
I know which
Jean's
one.
about Jean's about to give birth, and Wolverine is like ready to. She was like, Wolverine, there's an emergency, and his claws are out, and he's like ready to go. He's like,
Yeah,
who am
yeah,
I
yeah,
fighting? And she's like,
yeah,
it's the baby. He's like, uh oh.
yeah, yeah. That's what I was saying. There's a lot of good
A lot
comedy
of good comedy. That was a great moment.
um in this show, and actually, we'll get into some characters because you see Bishop,
Yep.
um, PJ. I'm not gonna lie, I completely forgot about Morph. You know,
Well,
um,
that's because he had such a small part. He was
I
only
don't
in
even
like 3
remember.
episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even remember him. And real quick with what are his powers exactly? Is he just like another Mystique?
He's similar to Mystique. He's a little bit different than Mystique. So he can morph, right? Shapeshift into another character.
But he
And
doesn't have the powers though, right?
I only if it's a physical power.
Okay.
And you know what I mean? Like
So he
if
can't do
it's
super strength or anything. Or
yeah,
he can't.
I think he might be able to. It all depends. Like I don't know if he can do Gambit's power because Gambit's power is charging a card and throwing
Yeah.
it. So I don't know if he can do that. And but he can do. I don't know if he can do Storm's powers because that's not
Right.
physical. She's
Right.
changing the weather. But I think if it's more of a physical power, he can mimic
Okay.
it, and it's
Okay.
not necessarily to their level so much.
Mm.
But he can mimic the powers.
Yeah, because
That's
I
what he can do.
guess in this show, I guess they try to almost like give like quick cameos, like he turns
Yes.
Mr.
Yep.
Fantastic, and I guess you
Yeah.
want to call it like they do it when it's plot convenient, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that, other
Absolutely.
than that, he's a fun character. You have Bishop, you have Cable. Um, I don't remember Forge at all. In
Forge is
here,
one of my favorite characters.
what
I
is
think
his
he was
power? What is?
Forge's power is basically if he can think of a machine, he can build the machine.
Oh,
That's
gotcha. That
basically
makes sense
yeah.
now. Okay,
If he
okay.
can think of it and he can design it. If the materials exist and he can think of the idea, he can build it. He can build it out. That's essentially what Forge does. He forges things.
Right.
Um,
Okay, that makes sense.
and he
Mhm.
was in the original, but only I think maybe a handful of episodes, a couple of
Right.
episodes. Um, but he has a pretty important role in this season
Yes. Hmm.
because of spoiler alert, they take away Storm's powers. She loses her
Yep.
powers, and
Hmm.
she goes on a journey to like find herself again,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
winds up meeting Forge.
Yep. And that I think there's 10 episodes. And of all the episodes, I think it's episode, what is this, 4? I
Episode
think it's,
4 when it's the stupid Motendo with Mojo
oh,
verse.
dude, I got a
Oh, I
headache
was
watching
so
this
mad.
episode.
I
So
hated it until the second
basically,
half of the episode.
yes, exactly. Exactly. Because and I hate Jubilee. I mean, spoiler alert, she doesn't die. And I wish she did die, but she's still alive. Oh my
Uh,
God. But she's gonna celebrate her 18th birthday at an arcade.
uh,
And she meets another boy who's like her age, like the love interest for her.
he's
Um,
actually from the comics. That character,
yeah. Can't try to find his name here. Oh, Roberto or something like that.
Roberto. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think
He-
of his mutant name. I'm pretty sure it's Sunspot.
oh,
But
that's it. That's it. That's
yeah.
it. Yep. And in the episode, guys, they I guess encounter a new Motendo video game
Ugh.
console, and they get pulled into it. I don't even know how this. To tell you the truth, I didn't even really understand how they even got sucked into it. Um, really, it was actually giving me a headache. You know, if you
Ugh.
have a person who's and I'm not epileptic, but anyone has that issues, be careful.
Yeah.
You might be after that episode.
It was.
Um,
It just was so out of place this episode. It's not a fun episode, right?
not at
Like
all.
I said, only the first half. When we get to the second half, it's better. But that whole Jubilee storyline, it's like you've built up all of this
Yeah,
crazy shit to put a pause on it so we can watch Nintendo World.
yeah, and
It
it's
was out of place. I guess you're supposed to have this episode in there to like build up Roberto's character because we really don't know him so much
yeah.
at this point.
Mhm.
It's to give him a personality. But I agree with you. This is
I
the
don't.
worst. That's the worst episode of the season. It is the fourth episode, and you've
Yeah,
had now 3 episodes building to something huge, and then you just hit a wall with this. And I
right.
I agree.
And
Very
this,
weak.
yeah, and the second half is when Storm gets to Forge's ranch, right?
Right.
And there's a part, if I remember correctly, this is when she encounters this like I guess spiritual owl, right?
Yes. Yes.
Kind of thing. This kind of like because it has like a Native American vibe and everything. So It's very it kind of reminds me of that show. It's an anime called like Death Proof. That kind
Mhm.
of not Death Proof, Death Note. I'm sorry. That kind of weird creature guy. Um, that kind of animation. So this episode has a lot of flashes in it, and then like we talked about before in terms of animation, I feel like they ramped it up with
Yeah.
it's sort of almost psychedelic. That's maybe the word I'm looking for. So definitely the weakest episode, but thank God that second half saves it because that first half, woo.
But then you get to episode 5.
Yep, thank
It,
God.
and
Every
episode 5, it almost makes sense in a way why they made episode 4 kind of lighthearted and kind of like,
true.
because
Hmm.
it's a moment of levity, because the next episode is heartbreaking.
Hmm.
It's beautiful. It's it's everything you could want in a TV show or anything.
Yep.
Um, but it does feature the saddest moment of the entire series, I think.
Yep.
Um,
And
spoilers,
it's been on the internet, so this
yeah.
is
So
totally.
spoilers, folks. We lose Gambit in this one. He's
Yep. Hmm.
that whole episode with the Hellfire Gala, and they're all living their best lives and partying
Hmm.
and all this other shit, and then it all goes to hell when like the Super Sentinels show up and they
Yeah.
start trying to kill all the mutants. And we haven't really touched on it, but there's a lot of friction between Gambit, Rogue,
Yeah.
and
There's like a love.
Magneto,
Yeah, it's a
because
love
there's like a bit of
triangle.
a love triangle, which is from the comics. She was with
Mm.
Magneto in the comics. That was a thing, and they build it into the show, and it's
And one of the things I wanted to talk about is actually with that whole love triangle was like I'm not gonna lie, man. Like I said, I have good comedy in the show, good action, and
a little romance.
gets a little sexy,
It
man.
does.
I mean, look, we're not getting nudity here, but there's some
Yeah.
like, oh
There's some
whoa, like
innuendo. Yeah.
yeah. I'm like, oh
Yeah,
damn,
absolutely.
like I'm like, that one point, later on in the show, Magneto, this guy's, got his shirt off.
Yeah.
He's in his whitey tighties. They're share a very passionate kiss. I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
Like you said, he has Magneto has this very long, flowing, gray
Yeah. He's got his
locks, and
luscious gray locks.
you got Rogue. Everyone loves her body, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so
It's not for all for kids.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
then they have to fight these Sentinels that are killing
yeah.
everyone.
PJ, real quick, X Men, more like Sex Men. Ooh,
Oh.
I had to do it. I had to do it.
Uh,
Uh,
the the action sequence with Gambit, with the
oh,
he's on the motorcycle, he's just throwing cards, he's charging everything, he's throwing blowing shit up,
yeah,
and then he gets caught.
right. We're not gonna don't share how he gets caught. Let's just kind of let's
Yeah, we'll leave it.
reserve
But he
that.
gets
Yeah.
caught. He
Hmm.
gets caught and delivers the best line, which is a callback to a line he does in the original cartoon. He says it in the original cartoon. Is the name's Gambit.
Yep.
Remember it.
Yep.
And just again, mind
Yep.
blowing scene,
Yeah.
and then an ending that is such a gut punch.
Yeah.
And they do that thing that all movies and TV shows do, where there's no music, it's
Yep.
just
Yep.
dialogue and then straight silence. And I
Hmm.
don't know why it works every time. It's so overdone. It's a gimmick, it's a trope.
Yeah.
Something
Hmm.
serious happens, it's got to be quiet.
Yeah.
But it always works, and it works so well in that moment. A show that used to do that a lot is 24, when something really heavy would happen, and then you just hear the dun, dun of the clock, and then it
Yep.
was super
Yep.
super quiet instead of like
Yep.
credit
Great
music.
example. Yeah.
Yeah, 24 was a show that did that a lot to great execution, and the way they do it here is very beautifully done. The silence matters.
Hmm.
Again, just unbelievable, an unbelievable animation, unbelievable writing, unbelievable performance from these voice actors in this show.
And look, Gambit's a fan favorite, and for him to die like this,
Early
it's
in the season too.
yeah, and it's earned, and it feels like I don't know, it feels good, but it's like this is where you want the character to go out.
Right.
To compare it to like Han Solo, what was it, The Force Awakens? You're just
Uh,
like
uh,
you,
yeah.
like you're just
This
like
guy died a hero's death
exactly. This is
in
where you want
battle
your
and
heroes to
war. He's
die,
a
man.
warrior. He is. They're all these people are warriors, and he dies a warrior's death, protecting people that he cares about, protecting people that he doesn't even know, just
Mm.
doing the right thing, because what's so great about Gambit as a character is he's a thief.
Hmm.
He's a thief. By all means, he's not a hero. He's not like Cyclops, love him or hate him, right? But Cyclops is
Yep.
bred to be a hero. Like that's why he's in the school with Professor X. He learns how to be a hero. He learns what the right and wrong, right? Whether you like him or you don't, he's a hero through and through, especially in the early years of this show, right? But Gambit, he's a rogue. He's a
Yep.
not I said rogue, but that's what he is.
Ah.
He's got a roguish personality. He's he's a scoundrel. You could compare him to Han Solo in a way where
Yeah.
he's supposed to be about himself. He's a thief. He does, but inside he has this moral code, this ethics code that he was just. Even though on the outside he looks like he's a scoundrel, on the inside he's got the biggest heart of them all.
Yep.
And you can point to his relationship with Rogue like that
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
Rogue can't touch anybody, so he can never touch his girlfriend in
Yeah.
Rogue, and he never thinks twice about it because
Mhm.
it's just a way to show the kind of person he is. Like he's not in it for the things you would think a person like him would be in it for. It's all about
Mm.
heart. So
Yep.
that ending just all about all about Gambit and his heart. Oh my god.
Yep.
What a like you said, a beautiful send off for that character.
Yep.
And the dialogue, it was very well done. And
Hmm.
and then it's from that point on in this show, they don't push the
Yep.
brakes. It's
Yeah. It's
just
all pedal to the metal. Yep.
yeah,
Hmm.
it goes crazy because then you get
And then the next episode, and we didn't really talk about this, but one of the villains, and I know I always laugh now when I see this character, is Mr. Sinister.
yes,
Okay, and I always think, do you remember that thing from back in the day, maybe 20 years ago? Someone put that thing on, it went viral. It's like, it's the Juggernaut, bitch, right?
yeah, yeah,
And Mr. Sinister's there, and that whole,
yeah,
oh my God. So whenever I see him now, I almost can't take him serious, but he's really devilish in this show.
yes,
He's a
yes,
real prick. So he's really good. But yeah, after that, you actually meet Professor X, and where he's at, and
yes.
he's with his main squeeze, and you start to see they're gonna basically could you help me out here? Like, it's elect him and his girl to be like,
To be
guess
like
the
the king and queen or
yeah,
whatever
of the
of
astral
empire,
plane.
empress, whatever
Yeah,
you want to call them of the Shire Empire. Yeah,
yeah. Hmm.
yeah.
And there's um what was it? Who who's was it? Is it Deathbird? Is that the one who's kind of against him? I get mixed up. Is it her?
Something like that. I mean,
Right.
they kind of gloss over that very quickly because they need to get you back to the X-Men.
Yeah.
So
So
that's yeah,
right. So basically, at one point, Professor X has met this thing. Well, if you're going to be the, you're a human, you're not like one of us. Well, if you're going to
right.
join us, you have to erase your. We're going to have to erase your
You have
memory
to
of the
erase your
X Men.
memories. You can never go back. You
Exactly.
can never go back.
Right. So that's his dilemma, or what do you
And
have to do?
and I just want
Mhm.
to say real quick, I hate Professor X. Hate his guts.
Dude, one of the things I gotta say in this, I'm not gonna spoil it, but at one point, Magneto owns him with a
Oh
great
yeah,
line. Right? I'm not
yes,
gonna.
he
It's good.
absolutely
I
does.
cannot share that. It's too good. But at this point, it's like this guy starts doing that same shit where he starts fucking talking too much.
Oh,
Him and his speeches and shit.
I fucking hate him.
At one point he uses his obviously uses his mind control and
Yeah,
he puts everyone back
in a
into
classroom.
class in a
Yeah,
classroom. And I'm like, oh
I
God.
just hate him. I can't stand him.
It's like, man, shut the fuck up, Charles. Shut the fuck up.
Oh, and the way they say his name drives me nuts. It's like Charles. It's always like
Yeah,
Charles, and I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and then I hate everything about this guy. And I'm like, why are you in charge of anything? All you do is cause problems.
Right. I don't know.
He's the oh, I
At,
hate.
at one point, this is fucked up, but he he finds his old school that orange yellow
Yeah,
wheelchair that's broken. I laughed. I don't know why it made me laugh. Because he like seems like so defeated. He's like, oh, you know.
because he had like fake robot
Oh
legs or
yeah, that's
whatever.
it. Right, right,
Yeah.
right, right.
So you see him walking around with the robot legs on in space, and then he comes back to Earth, and is like his floaty chair is broken. He's in a rickety, stupid pushchair, and you're like, and he's still with the annoying speeches.
Oh my
Ugh.
God. but I agree. He's definitely the characters I always hated the most in the old series, and even this series, is Professor X with too
Yep.
many speeches. You love his superpower. His superpower is badass. Same thing, and Jean Grey. Jean Grey,
Uh,
she's always moaning. And I'm
always.
like, Cyclops, man, you gotta
In the,
zap this bitch.
in the
You
in the
gotta.
original
Oh
cartoon,
my
she
God,
like
shut up.
passes out every time she uses
Oh.
her powers, and she's like, "Oh, Scott, I'm passing out," and she goes down every episode. Scott's got to go save her. She's falling down.
I mean, I
But
want
in
to.
this season,
Yeah,
she was a little loosey goosey. She's
yeah,
like, "All right, Scott, but also, hey, what's up, Wolverine?
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
show me
yeah,
that claw of yours."
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
she was a little,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so yeah, he comes
You
back.
got two
It's
of them
just
now. You got both Jean Grey and
yes,
Madeline.
yeah,
Both moaning and groaning. So I was like, yeesh. But you said, thank God they're not as bad, but they still. I
yeah,
guess even them the way they do it, I'm like, I think they're almost making fun of them, going like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? So it's just like
Yeah.
Jesus.
Oh, it's the worst. And then then we go back to hanging out with Storm and Forge, and I don't know. It gets a little goofy at this point when she gets her
Yeah.
powers back. Like
hmm Now
she's just
she's
like, I
all
believe in myself again, so I can make it.
yeah.
No, I
Now
don't know.
she changed her costume. Now she's like kind of black. It's like
Yeah,
sexier. I'm like, all
yeah.
right.
They, and they don't explain where it comes from. Like she can't make an outfit.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think you just gotta just take it because at one
yeah.
point Jubilee changes her outfit too. She
Well,
does
she's at the mall trying on clothes. She
right. Yeah,
basically
yeah.
steals clothes that she was
Right.
trying on because she gets attacked by
Right.
Sentinel. But
They do it
uh,
very subtly.
yeah.
Uh,
But with Storm, they were like, she's just wearing it. Deal with it. This
yeah.
is what
It
you
kind of
want to see
reminds
her
me
in
of
anyway.
remember Sailor Moon? She would like
Yeah,
transform. Kind of
yeah,
remind me of that.
yeah. So now you're like, all right, she's got her
Mhm.
powers back. We got there. Let's move on. Forge is gonna take her home. We're good to go.
Yep.
And then I think that's when the next episode is really crazy, right? Because that's when they find Trask.
Right. This is where they find trust. This is where the part of the show, right, for me gets, like I said, gets a little confusing when you have the
Yeah,
two, like, Jean Greys, and then
yeah,
here for me it gets like, okay, whoa, because they go kind of fast because you have Trask, and it gets
yeah,
very cosmic. We get very into space and future,
yeah.
so that could be a lot to comprehend all at once.
But
Mhm.
the biggest thing about that episode is like she realizes Trask can't really help them. So
Mm.
she's just like, fuck this guy, throws him out a fucking window.
Yep.
And everyone's like, oh,
Yep.
you can't kill a person.
Yep.
And she's like, the fuck I can't. This guy's the reason my Gambit's dead. So I'm gonna throw him out a window. And and then you find out, oh, he ain't dead. And he turns into I forget what they call him, but basically
It's like a
he's
high tech
like
like Sentinel.
like a sentinel, human sentinel sort
Yeah.
of thing. And now you realize there's a bigger villain out there. It's not Trask creating the Sentinels that's the problem. And now we learn that the villain is Bastion. Uh,
hmm
and Bastion is like an android kind of guy. He was like born an android or whatever. And
Yeah.
he doesn't like the mutants. He wants to turn humans into Sentinels to hunt down the mutants. Um, but and you find out he has Magneto at this point in time, we think Magneto died in the attack uh, on
In Genosha,
in
right? Which
Genosha.
is like this
It's like the mutant
city.
island.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and we think that it's the same battle that Gambit dies in. You're led to believe that Magneto doesn't make it out, but you find out that Bastion has him held prisoner. Um, and I'm gonna just kind of power through the end because it's 3-part episode, but
Yep.
a lot of shit happens. But the coolest thing that happens is once Magneto is freed, and I won't spoil how it happens, but
hmm
Magneto is freed, and he just
No.
goes the most ape shit without actually fighting anybody.
Yep.
He flies to, I guess it's the North Pole
Yep.
or Alaska, wherever, Antarctica, to the but the pole. That's where the magnetic pull is the
Yep.
strongest on Earth, and he uses that to enhance his powers to just shut off the Earth. There is
Yep.
nothing going on. The Earth's about to like
Yeah.
been out of control because Magneto's like, I'm shutting it all down. He like it's like a giant EMP that just
Yep.
shuts down the world. And now he's evil again. So you have to stop him so we can save the Earth from whatever.
Right.
And you also have to fight Bastion and you have to fight Apocalypse and you got to fight Sinister. So
hmm
now you got to split the X-Men up into 2 teams. And we made a decision. that. Well, first we had to get our old gear back, which is
Yep.
cool. It's so cool
Yeah.
to watch in the old school costumes.
Mm-hmm.
Cyclops with the skull cap,
Yep.
Wolverine in the yellow and brown, all very cool stuff. And then we have to make a team of people, and we say, okay, we got to fight the magnet guy, and then we got to fight everybody else. So let's take the guy with the metal skeleton and put him up against the magnet guy. This is going to go well. Um, and they fight, and and Wolverine does. Wolverine is the best at what he does, but what he does isn't very nice. He'll be
Right.
the
Right.
first to
Right.
tell you that. And this motherfucker stabs a dude with
Yeah.
his claws.
Mm,
And they've never shown Wolverine in
yep.
any medium, I don't think. Well, maybe the movies, but
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
like Logan, I think he has. But up until the old man Logan and stuff in the movies, you never really see Wolverine like stabbing people with the claws. He straight up stabs Magneto.
Mm-hmm.
And then Magneto was like, "Well, I'm gonna rip the adamantium out of your body,"
Yep.
and rip the adamantium off his bones. In a crazy scene. The battles and the action that's going on at this point. That's the same episode where Magneto drops the line on.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. I love that
yeah, that's
line. Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
then back on Earth where we have another crew of X-Men
Yep.
fighting everyone else. There's just battles like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in space, we're on Earth, all sorts of crazy stuff happens. Um, and then the X-Men will inevitably
Right. Well, your
win.
favorite character comes back, Professor X.
Yeah, we got to deal with Professor X, and even Scott's like, "No, get the fuck away from
Yeah.
me,
Hmm.
Professor X." And then Rogue flying away with the villains and everything because
Yeah. Yeah.
Professor X shit.
One of the things I, noticed, and I think I'm curious if you noticed this too, PJ. Um, at one point, Charles has to like try to go inside Magneto's mind and
Yeah,
change his mind, but he might
right.
lose his mind at this point because like Charles did such a mind control blast to Magneto
Yep.
to calm him down. His
Hmm.
brain's like fried,
Yeah.
and he has to not only save Magneto's brain because he needs him to
Right.
fix Earth. He also has to convince him to do the right thing.
Right. Yeah. Of
So
course.
he doesn't want to kill his buddy either. But there's a point when he's like talking inside his mind. It reminds me of the movie Inception with the water
Hmm.
and like you know what they kind of see, like they're having like flashbacks and
Yep.
trauma. It's just amazing how I know you're not the biggest Christopher Nolan fan, but I think out of all his movies besides The Dark Knight, Inception has been found in like every movie since then. I think the movie came out 2010, I think 20.
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, like it's
Um.
amazing. I've seen it in so many shows where like a dream within a dream, and there's so many. It's so influential, and you could definitely see like kind of
Yeah.
which is fine. But I was
Yeah.
watching, like, oh, hey, it's stealing from
Th-
Inception right now.
this is gonna lead, I think, to next season, or I don't even know if it'll be season 2 of X-Men '97. I think it'll be followed up on in season 3. Um, but there's Professor X becomes Onslaught, and um, it would take another 2 hours for me to explain what Onslaught is, and is we're gonna keep it to the show, but that's gonna come back. I think in either season 2 or season 3, where he's gonna become a different
Hmm.
character. Like I said, it takes a lot to explain what Onslaught is, but that's going to definitely be followed up on. So we finally finish our big battle at the end. Um, the X Men sort of win, I guess you would say that they sort
Yeah.
of win, um, but they are thrown through time, and now we have X Men in 3 different time periods. We
Hmm.
have what appears to be X Men in the future,
Yep.
which is where Scott and Jean wind up. Um, they have X Men in the past, in like the ancient Egypt,
Yep.
and that is where all the other X Men appear to wind up, with the exception of Scott and Jean. And then you have present day X Men, which I think is Bishop. We saw, was it
Yep.
Bishop or Forge? I forget who we saw.
I think both of
And
them
they
are there.
both,
Yep.
yeah.
Hmm.
And it looks like they're recruiting a new team of X Men because the other X Men are missing, and they have on the board like a board of other mutants, and they're looking to see who can be the X Men. So it makes me think the next season is going to take place on 3 different
Yep.
times, and I believe Apocalypse is going to be the villain in each of the 3 time
Yeah.
periods. That's
Hmm.
that's what they're setting that up for. I think. Um, it's straight from the comics. A lot of that stuff. the stuff in the future with Scott and Jean is straight out of the comic books. That's a deep cut X-Men thing. I was so surprised they went there with that whole future ending because we didn't talk about Cable, but
Yep.
Scott and Jean have a kid. That kid is Nathan Summers, who is Cable. Cable is Scott and Jean's kid. They don't get to raise Cable because they have to send him into the future to cure the disease.
Yep.
And now when they're in the future, they're gonna meet Cable as a kid,
Yep.
and they're gonna raise Cable in the future. But I don't think he's gonna know. It's a whole thing, but
Yeah.
yeah. But that's
Time travel gets tricky, but yeah.
yeah. But they're basically gonna raise their kid in the future. Um, I think she doesn't even go by Jean. He doesn't go by Scott. I think they're Slim and Red are the names they go by. He's Slim and she's just called Red, and they basically raise him in the future. They don't want to say what their actual names are. I think to like protect the integrity of the thought, whatever, some bullshit, and then they'll come back. But and then in the past, you're going to see the rise of Apocalypse, hopefully done way better than the fucking movie.
Well, yeah.
Because the movie was awful, but now you're going to have X-Men in the when he says when they say his name and he's and Sabanur, and then
Yeah.
Beast has the best line and the best delivery. He just goes, "Oh dear."
Yeah. That's why I said there's a lot of good
Yeah.
jokes in this show.
Yeah. And then in the present, you're going to have a new team of X-Men that Forge and Bishop are going to put together, and I think it's going to have. I think you're going to see Cyclops' brother Havoc. I think
Oh, yeah.
I think he's going to be in it. Um, I think they'll find a few more fan favorites. Maybe they bring back Iceman. Maybe they bring back Angel. So there's some connective tissue to the original series in this. And um, long story short, folks, this is a fantastic TV show.
Yep.
Fantastic X-Men story. The I say this with no hesitation. The very best thing Marvel has produced for a screen in the last decade or more, maybe more.
Yep. Yeah. No, I agree. Totally agree. It's definitely worth. Like I said, you don't have to watch the original series. You could just jump right into this. It's action packed. The story's great. I know you heard some spoilers today, folks, but it's really not gonna.
We didn't
It's
go
not gonna
too
ruin
deep
it.
on the spoilers. We just
No
touched
way.
on the stuff that was popular on the internet.
Yep.
There are so many, even the small moments. There are so many
Yep.
small moments
Mhm.
that really just hit. Excellent,
Mhm.
excellent piece
Yeah.
of
And
piece
like
of
and
animation.
like I said, at the end of each episode, you're like, damn, I want to watch the next one. It's really great. And I think, like you said, the next season, I think they got signed. They got signed for 2 more seasons.
Yeah, they do. They have
So,
3.
I'm really looking forward to it. And like I said, it's amazing. I feel like the animation divisions always do a great job, even with DC. They
Yeah,
always, I know, sometimes you have more to work with animation. Obviously, you can draw things that you can't
yeah, right.
computers, even practical effects. But just the storylines are just tighter. Everything's just,
Yeah,
it's just so.
because the cartoons are very heavily rooted in what the comics produced. They're not going off on a tangent. They're sticking to what they know works.
Yep.
Now, before we end this X-Men episode, there's a bit of a controversy. There's actually 2 controversies surrounding this
Oh
show.
my God. Hmm.
The first controversy is the showrunner was fired before the season actually aired on Disney Plus.
Whoa.
They have not said why. The only thing out there is he was toxic on I don't want to call it the set, but the studio, whatever you want to call it. And they released him. That's one controversy. So now the main showrunner is not going to be back for season 2.
Oh.
Most of the writing staff, I believe, is back. His ideas, because they were basically given 2 seasons from the beginning, so he was already there to help kind of plot out the first 2 seasons. He just won't be there to run the show this season.
Yes.
That could have an impact on season 2. But the controversy is we don't know why this guy was really fired, other than to say he was toxic. What does that mean? No one really knows. And the second controversy surrounding the show is about Morph.
Hmm.
Um, there are people on the internet that do not like that Morph was made into a I don't know the word for it, but gender neutral, is that a thing?
Oh
Or
yeah.
non-binary.
Okay.
Word.
I didn't realize that. None of they
Yeah.
even share that in the show, but I guess it's
They
insinuated. I didn't really catch on that.
kind of insinuated because in the original series when you met Morph, he's just a dude. He has a regular face. He's a
Oh
regular,
yeah.
and this one is more like his comic book
That's
appearance
right.
where he's just
Mhm.
got no features at all. and they allude to him having feelings of more than friendship for Logan, for Wolverine, and people do not like that. That's been a big controversy, and I don't know. I think the showrunner who was let go uh, is somewhere in the LGBT
Right.
atmosphere. I don't know which
Hmm.
letter is his. It's fine, whatever it is. That guy can do whatever he
Right.
wants. I got nothing bad to say about him because he gave me X-Men 97. I don't, he can do whatever he wants, and he's got my support just
Right.
because he gave me this show. But people are saying that he's trying to push an agenda with Morph and all this other stuff.
Oh,
To which I say, everyone who's saying that, go fuck yourself.
get a
Watch
life.
the show. Yeah, the
Get a
show is
life.
so good. You're gonna complain about a fictional character that could be a man or a woman at any given time because of his powers, having a thing for Wolverine, who has done stuff with dudes in the comics. I don't know that guy.
Right.
I don't see any agenda being pushed, but this guy, people are saying that's why he was let go. They're saying that the show was bad because of this woke agenda he's pushing through Morph and Wolverine. I don't see any of that. I think every piece of this show was fantastic. I think the guy who wrote it, I wish I knew his name. I should have done more research. It's Bo something or other. I forget his last name. I think it's Bo
Do I
something.
have no? Bo DeMaio. I
There it
have
is.
Bo DeMaio. There's
Yeah,
Jake
yeah,
Castorina,
but yeah,
and there's Chase.
Bo was the showrunner who got
He's
fired,
the,
and
ah.
yeah,
Hmm.
and I think he did a great job putting together an X Men show that's approachable, that anyone can enjoy, that hits on a lot of different levels. Like you said, it's funny, it's romantic, it's action packed, it,
Sexy.
it's sexy, it's everything. It's got a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Um, and look, I'm not an X Men guy. I've said that on many episodes. They're not my favorite comic book or superhero team.
Yeah.
After watching this show, I have gone back and started reading more X-Men comics than I've ever
Oh.
read, just
Hmm.
because this show is so good that I've went back and I've rewatched every movie. I have one left. I have to watch New Mutants. I haven't watched that yet.
Oh wow.
I've rewatched every X-Men movie. I went back and read years worth of X-Men comics that I haven't read in the past because I didn't like them enough to care. That's how good this show is, where I'm like, I need more
Yeah.
X-Men in my life.
And
So give this
and
show an Emmy.
yeah, and I think um one last thing. I think what's great about this show that I love that it's like it's timeless. You can watch this show 20 years from now.
It's still
No,
gonna be
that's
good.
I only saw a few. I want to say to be truthful, I didn't see full episodes, but there was a new Scooby Doo that came out.
Yeah,
And
Velma.
yes, that's it. And it was like, oh, I got so turned off. It was so like cringe and like
Yeah,
it was just that show is not gonna it hasn't aged now. And if you watch that 10 years ago, you're like, oof, that comedy doesn't work. This
right.
show,
It's gonna work.
yep, it's
It's that
everything
good.
about it. It's yeah, so which
I
is great.
agree.
I love shows like that where it's
Yeah,
it's, it's timeless. It's ageless.
timeless.
That's the
Perfect
best
word
thing
for it.
about comic
Timeless.
books too. They should be that. You should read them
Yeah.
anytime, unless they're period Pacific. But the best was kind of um anytime, anywhere. But yeah, folks, check the show out. Definitely a shining star in Marvel right now. So check it out. You know the deal. Same time, same table.
To me, my cool kids.
Boys and girls, lunchtime is over. For more information, visit their website at coolkidslunchtable.podbean.com. Follow the boys on all social media platforms. Just search Cool Kids Lunch Table Podcast. Now get to class before you get detention.